What is up, guys? How's it going? We're back working on the Duramax today. And today we're doing a PCV reroute on the Duramax. This is highly recommended if you have an LBZ or an LLY, because the PCV system on these trucks routes the oil from the crankcase right into the intake elbow, which then puts it right into the front housing of the turbo and puts it into your intercooler, which is not what we want. That is no good. So I'm going to show you how I'm doing it. You can buy a kit online. I pieced parts together because it's much cheaper. And I'm going to do a couple extra steps to show you guys the angles of what's going on, but you don't have to do every step I'm doing either. So here we go. I'm going to show you what we're working with today. The PCV system on these trucks is this pipe here, which is normally connected to this fitting. Now, if you don't have an S&B intake, it is still the same. There's still a fitting right here, and there's a T right here, and it plugs into there with a hose clamp. Now, if you do have an S&B intake, this is threaded. This fitting here is threaded right inside of there. So that's how I'm going to plug the intake for this job. So anyways, that's what we're getting rid of, because it takes the oil out of the engine off both sides and dumps it into this fitting out of the crankcase, and then that goes right into the front of the turbo and into your intercooler. So not a very great design from GM, but it happens. So anyways, these are the parts you're going to need. We need a 3/8 male pipe plug. As you can see here, just a pipe plug from the store. That is going to plug the S&B intake. If you don't have an S&B intake, you can find something rubber at Home Depot to plug it with and just put a hose clamp around it. Then you can get these PPE billet fittings that go inside the block or inside the valve covers. And they're on Amazon. They're not very expensive, but they're billet. They're a good part, come with O-rings. So those are 5/8 fittings. Then you're gonna get a 5/8 T and some 5/8 fuel line. I got 5 feet of it, should be enough. So I'm gonna jump right into this. I did already start pulling this apart because I wanted to see what those threads were so I could get a plug for it. So either way, that's why this is broken, because this is so brittle on my truck. It just breaks right apart. So that's another reason why these are junk. You can see it was getting oil all over my turbo because it was leaking out of here. As you see, there's oil everywhere. So I'm gonna set you guys down and get into it. All right, guys, the first thing we're gonna wanna do is remove the hose from the intake elbow. So this is how you're gonna do that. If you look in here, there is a hose clamp here. You're just gonna pinch it with some pliers. I got my pliers up here. I use these long, the long nose flats to get down in there. It's a little difficult to get in there. You're gonna pinch that together and pull this hose off of the fitting, whether you have a stock intake or not. That is the first step I did. Then I'm going to remove this intake boot or this intake pipe so that I can get to the hose, because it's right down between these, right between the ECM harness and the intercooler pipe. You don't have to remove this, but I'm going to do it to show you guys where the bolt is and everything. And then I am also going to remove the intake tube to show you where this bolt is on this side. So I'm going to do those two things real quick, and you guys can watch. Guys, as you can see, I'm over here working, and so is Avian, cleaning the new wheels for the Duramax. Just pointing that out. Look at that man, hard at work. How do I zoom in on this thing? You know, working hard. Okay, now you can see I'm sitting in the engine bay because it's a little easier to work on it this way. But I took off the intake boot here from the intercooler to the turbo, and I pulled off the intake pipe that's normally here for the air box so that we can see. So what we got here is, here's the hose, runs down to here, and as you can see, there's a 10mm bolt right there. My fingers are on it down in there. We're gonna have to pull that bolt out and then pop this hose out of that side of the valve cover, and on this side, right down in there, you can see the hose here. I'm moving it. At the bottom of that pipe right here, there's another 10mm bolt. It is actually right below this harness right here, and tucked in there. Really hard to see, but 10mm bolt. Unscrew that one, pop this hose out, and then you will have the old out. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Okay guys, so we got the pipe out off of both sides. Mine came out in 2 pieces because it broke, because it's very fragile. So like I said, these things are just not designed well. They get a lot of heat sitting above the turbo for one, and then they get brittle and they crack, and then they don't seal, and you just have oil everywhere. So I do not recommend. I recommend replacing it. So either way, let me show you what we did here. So you got your fitting that came out from down there. You can see the little hole into the top of the valve cover, and you can see the bolt hole a little better now. So to get that one, you just kind of got to move this harness away, and then I used a extension and a 10mm, and the extension has a little like swivel to it, so that helped out. And then on the other side, much easier. You can see it's right there. There's the bolt, and there's the hole into the engine. So that one's really easy to get to. So now we're going to take the parts from here. Sorry, took me a second. These go into those holes in the engine block now, and you reuse the bolt. It's got the O-ring on them. You're just gonna put them right in, so I will show you guys that. Also, you have this plug that I got from the store that is going to go thread into this pipe on your into that hole on your S&B intake. So I'm going to do that real quick. I'm just going to thread this on in there. You do not need to Teflon tape this. You can if you want to. You can pipe dope it if you want to. It doesn't really matter. This isn't under boost. This isn't under vacuum. It's just where the air filter air is coming from. So it doesn't really matter if you know, pipe dope it or seal it good or not. So I'm just going to tighten it down with a wrench and call it a day. And then we're going to install these once I get the package open. Now we're going to install one of these fittings, as you can see it now. It's got the little O-ring here. I do suggest rubbing some oil on that. And then you can just go down into the hole here and push it right in. I mean, it's not going to push right in because it's got a good O-ring seal now. The other one's pulled right out because the seal on them was junk, but there you go. Pushes right in. You're going to put the bolts in, and then you're going to run your new hose from there. I'll put them down here. This is what I'm worried about. I got a feeling I got a feeling I'm gonna drop this bolt into the great abyss. Okay, so now we got the bolts into the PPE fittings. They went right in, so PPE makes a great product. It lines up the way it should. O-rings felt good, popped right in, and we tightened the fitting on the S&B intake. So now you should look like this, where you're at in the project here. You got your plug installed and tightened. You got your fittings down there for where your hose is gonna go with the bolts in it. Also got your fitting here with the bolts in it. These bolts, these 10 mil bolts, do not need to be tightened very tight. Snug them up a little bit. It's a 10 mil bolt. It's not very strong. You don't need to put 50 foot-pounds of torque down to it. You know, 15 foot-pounds, 18 foot-pounds is probably more than enough. I just tightened them with the 3/8 ratchet and called it good. So now we're gonna run the hose. So you got your hose here. This is how I'm gonna do it. Do it however you want. I'm not your dad. So I'm gonna start by putting it on this fitting on this side. I did buy push lock hose because I am lazy. Push lock hose is supposed to secure when it goes over a barb. I'm gonna try it and I'll let you guys know if it leaks, but I don't think it's gonna leak. It's just pressure. You know, it's just venting to atmosphere now. So then you're gonna run it over to this side where it will go into a T-fitting here, and you're going to tee it down into that hose, and then you're going to run it out the fender over there and dump it to atmosphere. So you're going to have to pull it this way a little bit. I suggest running zip tie here to just hold it over to this side. You can also zip tie it to the harness right here underneath here where my finger is. So hold it over to the side. You're going to run it over to the top. You're going to cut your hose somewhere in here and run your T down to there. So that's what I'm gonna do now. I'd rather my fitting be right in here, so I'm gonna cut it like right here. Oops, I'm moving you guys around, sorry. Hurry, cut through there. There we go. So you cut through there. You're gonna take your T fitting. From over here, you got your T fitting. You're gonna push her together onto here. Okay guys, I'm back. Grab some hose clamps. For being a 5/8 barb and going on 5/8 hose, it doesn't fit very well, but it's usually how it goes. That's why I don't think you can even get
all this wiring in the way. That's the problem.
Yeah, I don't think you can even like tighten it how. I wasn't even gonna put a hose clamp on that one, but keep holding it. And we need a piece of hose that's gonna go from there to there. Hose clamp down on this one too, which is gonna be a nightmare as well. I don't know who cooked up the extremely tight fitment on them. All right, guys, there you have it. It's all complete. So you got your new hose running here. It runs down to the valve cover. There's a hose clamp down there on the PPE fitting that's bolted to the valve cover. Hose runs over the top. I got it zip tied off to the harness here to keep it away from the turbo. You got your plug here to plug the S&B intake. Hose runs over the top and comes over to here where we have a T fitting right here. And we got hose to atmosphere, hose to this passenger valve cover, and hose to the driver's side valve cover. And then, yeah, you just run this hose down to the fender well and it'll vent it to atmosphere. So that will prevent your turbo from sucking in oil from the crankcase and then pushing it into the intercooler. I highly recommend this mod. It's cheap. It's like 45 bucks. It's not very hard to do. It takes about an hour. So yeah, thank you guys for watching, and we'll be back with more mods soon for something. There's always something to be modded. Have a good one. Peace.